in advance. I don't send a text message out every single time, but I will try to start doing that again. But actually, believe it or not, it does cost money to send out text messages and stuff like that. So I'll figure out a way around that, But we have to watch our budget in the Black business. Okay, Zoom is excellent. Okay, yeah, make sure you register for the Zoom, and then Zoom will send an automatic reminder. Also, if you're not on our email list, one way to get on the email list is just pick up something free from us. If you actually go, and we love to give away free stuff. So if you go to drboycecrypto.com, drboycecrypto.com will give you a list of all the cryptocurrencies that I own. And also you'll be on the email list. So a lot of times before we do our Wednesday Powernomics training, I send out an email. So that way we'll try to find a way to stay in touch with you. All right. So let's see here. So he says here on page 134, Blacks can begin to build an alternative economy by buying from Black businesses the products that they disproportionately consume. Doing so will not only immediately create new market opportunities for Black entrepreneurs, but will also begin to redirect our 500 billion consumer revenue flow back into our own communities. Really, actually, it's now 1.6 trillion. Our neighborhoods are untapped consumer markets in which we can practice group economics. If Black America does not learn to protect its communities, institutions, culture, and businesses, the unending influx of immigrants will completely submerge Black America. In time, even the resources that it does own will be used against Black America. So what Dr. Anderson is talking about is what I call the Great Redirect. And the Great Redirect says this. It says, look, here's the reality. The reality is that you're facing with Black-owned businesses, you're being boycotted in at least a couple of directions. One, white people don't buy from you because they buy from themselves. And two, most Black people don't buy from you. So you get a double boycott. And what he's saying is that if we're able to really shift our thinking, we can at least redirect some portion of that 1.6 trillion back to our own businesses and our own communities. And so what this says is that, okay, let's say that we still are heavy consumers, which that's what we are. Christmas is coming. Give me a yes or no if you know some Black folks is going to act a fool at Christmas. Give me a yes or no if you know some families. And I'm not making fun of those families. If you're in that category, I'm not making fun of you. I get it. I bought Amazon gift cards, for everybody in my family. So we all buy gifts, right? So give me a yes or no if you have relatives who feel that the only way to really show love at Christmas to kids or to other adults is to buy them something. Or, give me a yes. And I say yes because I'm actually raising my hand. Me and my family, we go Christmas shopping. We do. We go to the mall and we go buy a bunch of stuff. And half that stuff we're not even going to use a year from now. But it's just fun. It's like a family tradition. And I think that that's totally okay. What I'm asking you to consider, though, is something that I want you to just write down. I want you to type this in the chat. And the term I want you to type into the chat is financial consciousness. Financial consciousness. Financial consciousness means that you are going to be conscious about what you do with your money when you're spending it, right? Financial consciousness means that I'm not just going to go and make it rain and not think about the balancing act of what I'm doing so that I don't overdo it. It's just like conscious drinking. If I go to a bar and I'm just downing the drinks one by one, then guess what? I'm going to be drunk. And the next thing you know, I get behind the wheel, I kill somebody, and I'm in prison for the next 20, 30 years. But if I'm conscious about my drinking, then what do? I tell my buddy, I say, hey, I need a designated driver tonight. So you're going to make sure I'm safe. Okay. And you're going to be around me in case I drink a little bit too much and nothing bad happens to me. Okay, great. Nobody puts anything in my drink. Okay. And if I get above 3 drinks, I need you to stop me. I need you to take the bottle away. That's consciousness, right? So a person who is conscious about their behavior is less likely to go overboard. So here's the thing. The same way that you get excited when it's time to go party or drink or people, the way people might get excited over their dope or their weed or whatever. Well, you can also get high when it comes to spending. In the Black Financial Therapy Department in the Black Business School, my wife and I did a whole 2-hour seminar this weekend with you guys on financial addictions and spending addictions. And one of the things that we talked about is consciousness, just being aware. Like if you have an awareness, then you're less likely to go overboard. Or think about it like this. Think about it when you But even when you think about things, anything that really feels good, anything that releases endorphins, you're at risk of kind of just going with the flow. That's why when a man is trying to get a lady to, do the oochie coochie in the bedroom or something, right? He might, pour her an extra glass of wine and play some music and be smelling good. And next thing you know, you get carried away. And then, a year later, you got this baby daddy that you can't stand, right? And you're like, oh my God, how could I have been so stupid? Well, part of it might have been because you lost your consciousness. Like if there was a law or somebody forced you right in the middle of it to turn the music off, sober up, and spend 48 hours thinking about whether or not you want to sleep with that person, the world's population would probably be half of what it is right now. It would probably be half of what it is right now. Because when you are forced to stop and look at what you're doing, or like if your best friend came in and said, girl, what are you doing? Think about who you're a Christian, girl. That is not, look at that man. Look at what you're doing. Look at yourself. Right? You'd be like, oh yeah, you're right. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be here. Right? Am I right or am I right? Think about that. Imagine if every time we did something that we were gonna regret later on, if somebody stopped us and forced us to be conscious of what we were doing. This is powerful, people. This is simple, and this is a simple yet powerful method to be able to make sure that when you're talking about your money's going where you want it to go instead of where somebody else wants it to go. This is a great way to keep you from being lulled to sleep. Let me tell you about a study they did. This is really fascinating. This is a study on consciousness that was very powerful. Children, they wanted to basically like look at children's morality and how a child's morality is affected by consciousness and awareness. So here's what they did, right? It's a real simple experiment. So at Halloween, you know how you let's say you put out a bowl of candy and you tell the kids, everybody grab just one piece, right? And let's say you put a little sign up that says everybody grab just one piece. What do you think kids are gonna do? Right? What do you think a lot of the kids are gonna do? You think they're gonna, let's say it's real good candy too. Are the kids gonna grab one piece? What are they gonna do? No, they're not gonna grab one piece. They're gonna grab a whole handful, right? Because you ain't looking. They're gonna grab 2, 3, 4, 5. They might come back twice, right? And they did that experiment. They set they set the bowl of candy out. They put the little note that said, please only grab one piece, and then they left. And they made it look like they made the kids think that they weren't watching. And they had the camera on, and the kids did exactly what a lot of kids do. They tore that candy up. That candy was gone quick. I did that one time. One time I put out a bowl of candy and I said, just grab grab some candy, grab what you want. That candy, that whole bowl was gone in like 10 minutes, right? So that's what happened when they set it up in the normal way, right? Now, here's what's interesting. So what they did was they then did the experiment again, but this time they put a mirror up where when you're stealing the candy, you had to look in the mirror and watch yourself be a thief. You had to confront the fact that you are stealing right now, right? Which cues up all these things in the brain that will remind you of whatever contradiction that you're engaged in. It's a consciousness. It's like a type of hyper awareness, like, oh crap, I'm a thief now, right? And do you know what happened? The amount of candy the kids took dropped dramatically, because it's one thing if I'm just like, I'm gonna grab this and run and not think about it. It's another thing if you're forcing me to reflect on my behavior. If I'm reflective, if you're forcing me to reflect on my behavior, and you're like, Boyce, you can't be stealing that candy. Boyce, you're a Christian, you're a good person, or whatever, right? Or you can't go out spending all that money. Don't forget, like you're not, you're on a diet, or you're trying to save up for this house, and you're trying to invest your money, right? It makes you sort of slow down a little bit, and that little bit of slowdown is huge when it comes to what happens to your money. Well, why is that? Well, because corporations spend a lot of money. They spend billions of dollars a year trying to figure out ways to get you to be financially unconscious. They study how you spend. People don't spend money because they make the logical choice to buy products or whatever. They don't usually do that. They buy based on emotion. So if you run into the clothing store and they have a picture of some celebrity that you look up to, and they're playing some real cool music, and the person's telling you how good you look in that outfit, then you might get carried away with that moment and end up buying something that you don't even really want, right? So what I'm telling you to do is be financially conscious over the holidays. What does that also mean? Well, it might mean having some balance. I've mentioned to you guys a bunch of times, like just buy your kids some stock over the holidays, and it really shouldn't just buy it over the holidays. You should be buying it all the time. That $5 a day investing plan that I laid out for you guys on my website, boycewatkins.com, is one of the simplest and most powerful ways to literally flip your whole financial generational legacy story on its head. It will change everything if you're able to simply invest consistently and don't sell your assets. Don't give it 20 or 30 years. And next thing you know, you'll be the richest person in your family, and everybody's going to be mad trying to figure out how you did it. And what in the way you did it was not through some fancy technique. You did it because you had basic discipline and simple levels of financial awareness and consistency. Consistency is the key. My whole platform, everything I built up, I've made some money. People made jokes about me making money from investments and all this other stuff. Well, it came from consistency. Every day I get up and I do the same thing. Every day I get up and I'm thinking, what am I going to do today to improve my life? That's it. That's literally what I do. And it's just like a habit. And over the years, it all piles up. Next thing you know, you have this long list of accomplishments that you have. So be consistent. Be consistent and be conscious. Consciousness and consistency will carry you to the top of the pile every day, every time. And teach that to your kids too. All right, so let me keep going here. This is page 134 from Powernomics. Dr. Claude Anderson says blacks can begin to build an alternative economy by buying from black businesses the products that they disproportionately consume. Doing so, okay, I already said that. To implement this strategy for an alternative economy, the first step is to study our neighborhoods and determine if and where black businesses would have a competitive advantage based on black population, political control, consumer spending patterns, cultural identification, or control of resources and markets. We must envision the opportunities that could exist in a vertical order of obligation, then boldly seek to establish industries in those areas. The nature of racism itself can facilitate building black businesses and industries within black communities. Racism is designed to exclude black people. We can take advantage of this by making excluded black people and their communities the primary target for businesses. Black people have a separate culture and separate living patterns. Black businesses are already aware of the consumer interests and needs of black Americans. If they would gather the resources, produce the product, then market their products in every black community across America, the Powernomics vision will work to condition more black people to buy black first. 36 million black people represent a prime market for vertical business opportunities. So you have everything you need. You don't really need white folks to give you a wheelchair or a crutch to get where you got to get to. All I really ask for, if you're white and you're watching and you want to know how to be a true ally, write that $14 trillion reparations check and then put some of that wealth in the hands of all of the brilliant black people in the community who know how to build institutions but just don't have the capital that they need to take them to the next level. And then secondly, when your children are trained on how to see wealth all around them, they'll realize that important fact that I've shared with you a million times, that most wealth does not involve money. Cash is only one type of wealth, and it is a small segment of the massive multi-trillion-dollar wealth stack that is sitting in the black community. There is far more wealth in your relationships. There's a ton of wealth in your talent. My Lord, look at how much talent you have. There's a ton of wealth in your labor. There's a ton of wealth in your families. There's so much wealth that's there. Okay, so I want you to really make sure that your kids understand these lessons. Bring them to this class if you have to. I wanted to do this Powernomics training for free for everybody because I don't want anybody having any excuses. All you got to do is pay attention. That's it. You don't have to pay any money for this. The black business, we have to raise money, so there's some things that we can't do for free. Because we want to be independent, and you have to pay a cost for freedom. Freedom is not free. However, this is something that I wanted to do for free, and all I'm asking you to do is bring your relatives. Like, bring them, because they're probably pissed off. They're probably frustrated. They're probably stressed out. I talked to somebody just today who I think about. I'm learning. I'm always learning as I'm living. Living is learning. So right before I talked to you all, I had a conversation with somebody I've known for a long time who had a brother who is struggling like a lot of young black men are struggling. Her brother is 27 years old, and he got a hold of some bad weed a few years ago, and his mind ain't been right since. And that led us to have a conversation about what drugs have done to black people and why drugs are the number one enemy of black people. And I don't understand for the life of me why we will glorify rappers who promote drug abuse amongst young black men, because we don't understand how terrible that is for the community, especially given the things that they're putting in these drugs. The fentanyl is killing people, but then you've also got other stuff these drugs are laced with that is causing all kinds of psychiatric effects in these young men, ruining them for life. Process this. So I said to her, I said, look at this. Your brother is 27, living with his mama, going crazy, acting a fool, ain't working. I said, he's supposed to be somebody's husband. He's supposed to be somebody's dad. He's supposed to be the head of a household. But somehow along the way, something broke down, and this very valuable asset in the community who could have become anything is now just floating around like a disabled puppy, like literally a liability on those around him. And like in a lot of our families, give me a yes or no if you've seen this. Give me a yes or no if you've seen this in your own family. And like in a lot of families, the people carrying this little pathetic, broken black man around are the women. The women in the family, the strong black women carrying the load for everybody, and God bless y'all for being strong. I think being strong is the ultimate compliment, but that is offensive to me. That is damn right embarrassing. I am so embarrassed to be in a community where the women are carrying the men. That is not a world I'm going to live in. Excuse me, y'all got me choking it. I refuse. I refuse to be sitting to the sideline like a little punk while the women are doing all the work and carrying the load. That's not the community I'm living in. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That is not, no, 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 hell to the no. I won't even let my wife take out the garbage. I'm like, no, 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 you stay right. Stop. No, you're not pumping that gas. I'm doing this. Right. And I really think that sense of pride has to be something that we reinstill in our young men. We got to do this. And we got to reject all this wussified culture that they're putting on these men, where they're teaching them to make excuses instead of actually trying. And I understand. I feel bad for them because, in my biases, I grew up with a father who didn't let me make excuses. My father did not let me. My father would laugh at me. He would call me the biggest bitch on earth if I was 27 years old, sitting at home up under my mama and ain't working. It's one thing if you live with your mama and you paying a third of the rent. I get that. That makes sense to me. But you sitting there like what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? And here's the issue. The issue is that we just have so many things to work through, and the missing father is a big deal, and families break up for different reasons or whatever. And then you have what's being promoted in media. It's sad. They really want your men to be wimps. They want them to be broken. They want them to be irresponsible. They want them to be selfish. They want them to not think about anybody other than themselves. They want them to abandon their kids and abandon their women and everything else. And it breaks my heart. It just tears me up. And so whenever I see a situation like that, I'm sitting there thinking, ain't this a bitch? This guy's 27 years old, and he's a liability and a threat to the women around him. He's not protecting them. He's not providing for them. He's not coming through for them. And I don't know nothing about that world. And I think a lot of y'all, if you were lucky, you grew up in a world where you knew what a real man looked like. And I really think that number one, the real men got to stand up, and number two, we got to show that respect to those real men and let those men be men, and support them in whatever way that you can, in a way that's healthy for you, because there's an important role that we play in the community. And I think about how many times my father came through for our family. I can think about how many times we didn't have enough, and my daddy went out there and made it happen, like Michael Jordan in the clutch. He came through and did what was necessary to make sure we were protected. He did what was necessary to make sure we were provided for. He was a superhero in that regard. And there are other men out there like that. And those men, here's the point, those men need to get honored and respected 10 times more than these dumbass rappers who are addicted to drugs, abandoning their babies left and right, rapping about killing other black people and throwing all their money away. That is not the culture that you want to embrace on any level. We need to really look at the real culture, which is where the real men live. So this is. I apologize if I sound a little bit triggered on this, but this is something that really bothers me, and it's something where I see the loss there. The loss there is when you have that man who's 27, 28 years old, who never learned his personal power nor his responsibility to those around him. it's a wasted opportunity. Because if you flip that, imagine if that man was on top of his game. Imagine if he wasn't making investments and educating himself and working hard and showing courage and commitment and discipline and responsibility and confidence and being the great leader that he's meant to be. Well, that family rises with that man. That family is a stronger unit because they can all sit behind that man and say, wow, look, our leader is an amazing guy. And the women would feel safe and they'd say, gosh, my life is so much better because of this man. And so I would say to any black man that's really listening, maybe you don't have a man in your life like that can show you that. I had some men in my life that just kind of embarrassed me because they were so sad, weak, and pathetic. But I think the good measuring stick for you to use is one that I gave to my son. I'm his bonus dad, so I call him my son. But he's got a biological father who's a very nice man too, and I work with him, and we both love him. I said, to me, the number one measuring stick of your value as a man, in my view, is whether or not the people in your life can say that their life was better because you're around. That's the question mark. When you're around, is their life better or is their life worse? Do they feel uplifted and supported, or do they feel like they've got another load to carry? That's it. It's that simple. And so my goal when I go to my grave is to be able to be in that casket smiling because I got a bunch of people there who say my life was better because Boyce came into it. And I include y'all in that group. Everybody listening right now, you're part of that group too. So at my funeral, just know it right now. Y'all can play this clip at me if I die tomorrow. Y'all play this clip at my funeral. I want everybody to talk about if this has occurred. I want you to, if you can reflect on some way that my presence has made your life better, then that will make me smile inside my casket. I kid you not. Like I can go to heaven and feel like I did my job. That's it. That's your job. It's just like playing on a football or a basketball team. Why in the hell would you want the team to lose games because they gave you the damn ball? That makes you a punk. You should be embarrassed. That nobody wants to be. Who wants to be on the basketball team where every time they pass you the ball, you dribble it out of bounds and put the ball in the wrong basket? You're a clown, you idiot. Like, learn how to play practice, focus. The team should be winning because you get the ball. They shouldn't be losing games because they gave the ball to you. So the black man, I just really believe that in general, I just see so many women that love us and they want us to be the leaders that we're meant to be. They're like, go black man, go. When we achieve something, they're cheering for us like, woohoo, right? And so to me, they want to give us the ball. Like some of the black women have learned to dunk and lift weights and carry the load and all that, but that's only out of necessity sometimes. Sometimes they're like, you know what? I would love to have like a man that I can sit back and be proud of, who's, whether it's a father, husband, son, boyfriend, whatever it is, that is gonna like be able to be something where I can cheer him on and I can take a little bit of a breather. So I just encourage all the men that are listening to consider that. I don't think you're really going to hear that anywhere. I think that much of the language we hear in the culture is sympathy language, feel sorry for yourself language. Oh, it's so hard to be a black man. Oh, black man, this black man. And I get all of that. It's right. It sucks sometimes. It's hard as hell. I get it. But then there's a point where you gotta like, start playing the Rocky music and say, I'm not going down like that. I might not win, but I won't lose because I gave up. That's it. Now you get to make the choice as to whether or not you're going to quit. And some of our men are trained to quit. I do not want quitters in this space. I want you to commit that no matter what level you're on, you're going to do your best. That's all people want from you. That's all people want. That's all I want. Let me keep going. Let me keep reading. All right. Page 134, Powernomics. Powernomics.com. That's where you can get Dr. Claude Anderson's books. I hope you will support him. That's a strong black man that I love and I look up to. And that is he's a kind of guy that's just a great role model for me, and I love him for that. And he's a former soldier. He's a former Marine. So thank you for your service for all the soldiers that are in here. And I notice that a lot of soldiers follow me, and I think that we get each other. And I have tremendous respect for soldiers. So thank you for those of you that have served. All right, so let me keep going. To implement the strategy for an alternative economy, okay, so let's see. The structure of racism, okay, I already read that. Let's apply our principles of dominating in business wherever we dominate in population. There is no better example than the black prison population in America. Though we are reluctant to profit from the suffering of our people who are in prison, we have no choice but to offer the best services and products that they can possibly get in prison. Others already profit from blacks in prison. Crime and incarceration are areas that demonstrate the principle of creating businesses where we dominate as consumers. Black Americans are only 12.4% of this nation's population, yet we dominate the prison population. Out of over 2 million prisoners in the United States, blacks make up approximately 50% of that population. During the years that ought to be the most productive of a young black man's life, between 20 and 35, nearly 40% of all black men are either in prison, on parole, or on probation. Black people ought to dominate in the management and profit making aspects of the criminal justice system. We can use those profits to help staunch the flow of black men into the prison system. Huh, that's interesting. I didn't know he wrote about that. I think that's controversial, right? You know, making profit from the prisons, but I think that if it's done ethically, if it's done in a way that keeps people out of prison, then obviously that can work. But if it's done in a way that exploits people, that wouldn't be good, obviously. Various levels of government spend billions of dollars annually on the purchase of materials, equipment, and supplies for prisons, such as sheets, blankets, bedding, shoes, and uniforms. The average construction cost for each jail cell is approximately $80,000 plus another $24,000 per year to care for each prisoner. Prison systems spend more than $3 billion a year procuring shaving lotion, soap, and other toiletries for black prisoners. Additional billions are spent on contracts to private corporations to manage prisons and provide health care. Since blacks are dominant in the prison population, black businesses should also dominate in contracts for prison construction, management, suppliers, and professional services to prisoners. Interesting. Okay, so Dr. Claude Anderson seems to believe that the practice of blacks dominating where they dominate as consumers and in population should also improve prison conditions and reduce mistreatment of blacks. So what do y'all think? That's an interesting idea. I've never read that from Dr. Anderson. He's kind of saying that if we were actually controlling the prisons, we could actually have some say in how inmates are treated and where that money goes from the prison system. I think that is a touchy issue though, because if you approach that as a capitalist, capitalism doesn't really have much morality. So if capitalism realizes that you can increase your profits by locking more people up, then that's what you're gonna do. And so I personally will admit I'm not. I don't look to invest in prisons. You know, in general, that's not my thing. But I think that might be something to think about. And by the way, I want to warn everybody: there are fake Boyce Watkins accounts out here that will hit you up and tell you to send me an inbox message, and that is not me. And I see one in the chat, so that's what led me to mention that. So if you get an inbox from me or an inbox request or something like that, and it looks like I'm sending you private messages asking you to buy Bitcoin from me or something, just know that that's not me. And I want to warn you also because I know some people that have lost some money that way, so I don't want that to happen to you. All right, so action step number 3 is focus on wealth building and restoring the economic intent of the original civil rights laws. On September 27, 2000, USA Today printed an article about racial and ethnic household incomes hitting an all-time high between 1989 and 1999. During that period, the median income of black Americans was below Asians, whites, and Hispanics. The article indicated that the income gap between rich and poor was not getting wider. The article implied that even though blacks were on the bottom, they were not too far below Hispanics, so conditions were improving for everyone. What the article failed to address was why black Americans were still fixed on the lowest income rung. Specifically, it should have addressed why Asians and Hispanics, 90% of whom have been in the United States less than 30 years, can have median incomes that are above and nearly double a black population that has been here for over 400 years. There will never be a satisfactory answer to these questions as long as researchers and politicians continue to compare blacks with other groups and then conclude that the reason blacks are still on the bottom is their own fault. Researchers have yet to analyze the race factors that make it possible for poorly educated immigrants to have better life opportunities than better educated black Americans. According to the National Research Council, Hispanics only need an annual income of $3,000 to live in the same neighborhood with blacks who earn $40,000. Comparing black income and wealth to ethnic income and wealth is like comparing apples and oranges. Black poverty has been fixed over time. It is gratuitous poverty that was given to them by centuries of exploitation and exclusion. Yet blacks are consistently lumped in with newly arriving immigrants who brought poverty into the country with them. Their poverty is typically eradicated within one generation. The 18th generation of black poverty is accepted as normal and basically ignored. Okay, so Dr. Anderson's basically saying don't compare us to immigrants, and I do agree with that. I think that we shouldn't compare ourselves to immigrants, but also I think we can learn from immigrant cultures that start businesses and things like that. I would actually speculate this, that one of the big challenges you have isn't just the racism against you in terms of stopping you from doing the things you want to do, but a lot of the racism comes from what you're trained to do from birth. So many of us grew up in those households that taught us to sort of, rise within the system. Go to school, make good grades, go to college, go $100,000 in debt, and then get a good job one day. And without much conversation about wealth building, ownership, real estate, all the ways that people actually make money. So what I'm simply saying to you is a very basic idea. Let's short circuit that whole system, that whole process. Have our kids at an early age. All they got to do is learn about three things. Learn the basics of three key areas. One is real estate. Their real estate ownership. You want to own property as soon as you can. If you own property, if you're acquiring property, acquire it so you can give it to your kids or put them in a position where they can get their own property. When I was talking to my goddaughter not too long ago, best thing I ever did for her was help her buy a house. And now that she owns a house, I remember she hit me up and she was stunned because she made $100,000 because the value of her house went up $100,000 in 1 year. And she was like, I made all this money. I didn't do any work. The second area would be entrepreneurship, because knowing how to start your own business allows you to increase your streams of income by developing side hustles. You also have an exit strategy in case your job isn't paying you what you're worth. Because here's the thing, you're cursed whether you're good at your job or not good at your job. You're cursed whether you're good or not good. If you're not good at your job, you're going to get fired, which means you're going to have another plan B. If you're good at your job, then they're going to pay you well and take good care of you to keep you where you are. But you're still getting ripped off, because chances are, if you're really good at what you do, then the amount of money they're making from your labor is about 3 times more than what they're actually paying you. So if you are among that talented tenth that's kicking ass and taking names on your job and winning on every level, you're on the fast track for promotions and everything else. That means that you're in the wrong place. Do you understand this? Like, some of you are high flyers in corporate America. You're doing extremely well. They are, they're giving you raises and promotions because they love you, and they're hoping you never find out the truth. The truth is that the reason that you rise above imagine if we're all chickens on a farm, and you're the chicken that's flying up in the air, and you're flying 10, 20 feet in the air. So they're rewarding you for being a high flying chicken. Well, the reason that you're a high flying chicken is because you're not really supposed to be on the chicken coop in the first place. You're not actually a chicken. You might really actually be an eagle, or some other bird that's supposed to be flying 1,000 feet in the air. Meaning that the reason that you're so great in terms of doing what you do in your job is because you are a hardworking person who's really not meant to be the employee. You're meant to be the boss. You know, I was good at my job. Like when I was teaching at Syracuse and all this other stuff. Like, I was good at my job. I mean, I was kind of black and radical, which caused a lot of issues, but I was good. And I kept running into all these obstacles, these glass ceilings, and all these things trying to constrain and control me. And I was very frustrated by that. And in hindsight, I look back at that and I realized that the natural reason that I was frustrated was because I was meant to do something bigger and better anyway. I was meant to sort of soar at a much higher level than what they were sort of providing me with. Do you understand what I'm saying? Or when I was 18 and I kept running into obstacles with my parents, and eventually I got pushed sort of out of the house. Well, that was natural because I was becoming a man and I wasn't meant to be my father's little boy anymore. I was a man. I needed to have my own space, right? So ultimately, some of you are in that category where you're super talented. In another universe, in a parallel universe, you would have been trained to do what Donald Trump did at the age of 27. He was running a $25 million company that he was then able to turn into $1 billion company. Donald Trump is not a good guy. Donald Trump is an arrogant prick. Donald Trump is all these things that the media says in a lot of ways. But one thing that he also is he was actually a pretty good businessman. Whether we want to admit it or not, his father, I read his whole bio I read his father's whole bio because I wanted to know not just about the apple, I wanted to understand the tree. So I read the Trump family history going back to about 1913 when Trump's grandfather died, and his dad was, all right, sorry, in the 1930s, his dad was like maybe a teenager, and he made one small decision that changed his whole family trajectory for the next 100 years. His father was a carpenter, and he would fix people's apartments. And he was working for all these millionaire real estate developers who would hire him to go in and fix these apartments. And he was really good at it. So everybody wanted to hire him. He was that high flying superstar employee that many of you are right now. Well, one small decision that he made that changed everything was he said, instead of me fixing other people's apartments, why don't I just buy some of my, of my own and fix them myself? And that's what he did. He started buying real estate. I mean, I think he started buying it during the Great Depression, right when the economy was kind of, in a really low point. And by 1946, when Donald was born, his father was already doing pretty well financially. By the time Donald got to, I guess you get to maybe the 1970s, where his son is like 24, 25 years old, and he wants to, or maybe what, 1976, he was 30. So in the early 1970s, he's about 25 years old. His father was able to give him a control of $25 million worth of assets. And his son never went through the whole like student loan, looking for a job phase. He went straight into real estate development, business development, making deals, and that's how he became known as the ultimate deal maker in the 1980s, which led to a book that he wrote in about 1989 called The Art of the Deal. And at that time, Trump was respected as one of the great businessmen of the country. It wasn't until later he got into politics that people started to sort of see him in a different way. But what I'm saying to you is that, that little pivot, that tiny pivot that his father made in the 1930s, if his father had not made that pivot, the whole Trump family story would have been completely different. So I want to ask you all right now, instead of it being, 1922, it's 2022. What tiny pivot can you make right now in your life that is going to change the story of your family for the next 200 years? Where's that pivot? Is it going to be where you buy your first home? Is it going to be you taking a class on how to start a business? Is it going to be you deciding to have family business meetings every Sunday and actually talking about economics, right? What's going to be is it going to be when you start buying stock and you commit right now to buying $40 worth of stock every week without selling the assets, right? What is your tiny pivot? What pivot are you making right now? If you already made the pivot and you're making it and you're committed to it, then keep making the pivot and don't judge the results too early. Like, don't judge what you're building by what it looks like right now, because a lot of you have businesses that probably don't look like very much. I love to talk about how UPS was started by two teenagers that were delivering packages on their bicycles, or how the McDonald's brothers created McDonald's, and they had one tiny little restaurant that just happened to have a super efficient, order delivery system, but they were actually losing money because they were selling too many products. And it was one little tiny pivot that made the difference. The tiny pivot of the McDonald's brothers was when they realized, they said, hey, you know what? Instead of us serving fried chicken and ice cream and everything else, how about we just focus on the things that people want? So we're going to sell a hamburger or a cheeseburger with an order of fries and a drink, and that's it. And we're going to get really, really good at selling those 3 or 4 items, and that's it. That literally was what led to McDonald's being on its way to becoming the great corporation that it is. And then later on, other people came and got involved, and it became a franchise. And now you have a McDonald's on every single street. So most of you have some sort of multi-million, multi-billion-dollar possibility right under your nose. There's probably some little pivot that if you make that pivot, it'll change everything. I'll give you another example of a tiny pivot. When Twitter first got started, Twitter was not Twitter. When Twitter first got started, it was this big app that had all this crap on it that nobody wanted. So they spent all this money building this massive app that nobody really wanted to use. And so it was a miserable failure. So once they failed, they went back and said, okay, what happened here? Why did we put all this money into this thing and it didn't go anywhere? Obviously, people don't want what we have to offer. And what they found was, in the middle of all the dust and the ashes and the dirt and the destruction, was they found that people enjoyed these little tweets. They were like, man, people really like these tweets for some reason. They didn't know why people like tweeting. They was like, okay, well, let's rebuild and let's focus on the tweets. So they focused on the tweets. They focused on their strength. They made that tiny pivot. Now you got Twitter. Elon Musk buys Twitter for what? what was it, $44 billion. $44 billion company that came from a tiny pivot. This happens all the time. Some of you may be watching that Netflix show called Wednesday. Wednesday, I watched Wednesday with my daughter. I grew up, I go back all the way to the beginning with the Addams family, right? I remember the Addams family from the 50s, from the, 80s and 90s. And, and now you've got a show called Wednesday. Well, Wednesday's kind of a pivot. They were like, okay, people like the Addams family, but they really like Wednesday. So we're going to focus on Wednesday. We're going to create a show called Wednesday, and then which is going to really go to the sweet spot, because the last time the Addams family had a movie in the 1990s, Wednesday was the superhero of the movie. The whole movie was pretty much about Wednesday. So they were like, let's just call it Wednesday. And then the other thing they did was they said, let's grab some good ideas that are already out there, make them our own, and then create this amazing show. So if you watch Wednesday, what you'll notice is that Wednesday ain't nothing but an Addams family pivot that is a mixture between Stranger Things and Harry Potter. If you go through that show, you'll see all kinds of little scenes that remind you of Stranger Things and Harry Potter. So they looked at what was winning. They made their nice little combination. Boom. Next thing you know, you have the greatest show in Netflix history. That was one of their big wins. So your big win is out there. What you have to do is, number one, remain committed to what you're doing. You gotta stick with it. I know it's hard. It may fail, but you gotta stay committed. And then number two, keep on obsessing over it. Keep talking to people about it. Keep looking for the pivots. Look for the data. You're gonna find something in there. And all you gotta do is have one success. One success can change everything. It can change everything, right? But you gotta be committed to the culture. You got to be as committed to building your family wealth as a rapper is to finding his next hit. There are some artists who are legends who literally, if you really look at their whole track record, they only got about 3 songs that were major hits. Everything else, people forgot. But they got 3 or 4 songs. Like, for example, this is not the perfect example. Some of y'all might even get mad when I bring this example up. But if I was to wear a color at a tribute concert for the artist known as Prince, what color would I wear? Answer the chat. What color would I wear if I was representing Prince? What color would I wear? I would wear purple. Well, why would I wear purple? Where does purple come from? There's an album with the word purple in it. Somebody put the title in there. Purple rain, right? Amazing album, amazing movie. Several songs on that album, like banging hits. Prince made hundreds of songs, and some of y'all love the hell out of Prince. I get it, so don't get offended, please. My wife, if I talk about Prince, she gets mad. I get a little bit jealous because I'm like, how you gonna be, like looking up to this guy, this little short guy with high heels on, right? But still, I get a little jealous of Prince. But still, I know that there are some hardcore Prince fans in here, and I get that, right? You know about all the other dozens and hundreds of songs that he's made that have been really good, but most people kind of only know about Purple Rain. They know Let's Get Crazy, do, let's get down, right? They know about the song Purple Rain. They know about the movie. So really think about this. What would Prince's career be if you took Purple Rain out of the equation? What if you took away anything purple? What if you took away that whole album and that movie and everything he did in the 80s and just focus on what he did later? Now, he did some good stuff. I'm not saying he didn't. Little Red Corvette and all that, right? A lot of good stuff. Brilliant artist. But if you took away Purple Rain, you don't have the same guy. You can't compare him to Michael Jackson off of Diamonds and Pearls and Raspberry Beret. So you just can't. He doesn't, like the Prince Michael Jackson debate has merit if Purple Rain is in the mix. But if you take Purple Rain out, you can't have that debate. Just like with Michael Jackson, if you're comparing him with Prince, you take Thriller out, it kind of changes. It doesn't mean Michael Jackson wasn't amazing. He did a lot of amazing stuff, had a long career, but Thriller kind of was that pivot, that one spark of an idea that kind of really took him to that superstar status. So what I'm saying to you is that generally speaking, if you look at most people, most big corporations, most multi-billion-dollar players in any game, you're going to usually find that one idea or that one thing that just took them to a whole nother level, right? So what I'm saying to you is that your one thing does exist. And the challenge is, do you have the patience and determination and commitment to finding that one thing? Because once you find it, everything changes. I promise you, everything changes. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and finish up for tonight. I hope that this Powernomics discussion was beneficial to you. I won't see you all until next Wednesday after Christmas. Until then, I hope you guys have a great holiday. And just I'd be remiss not to mention, if you want to take a look at my new book, it's called The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. That and my Black American Money books and everything else, it's all available on Amazon. So feel free to go to Amazon.com. Also, we have flashcards. You guys know about our financial flashcards for kids, which is at financialflashcards.com. That's financialflashcards.com. So we have flashcards for financial concepts, flashcards for entrepreneurship, and we actually have some new flashcards. Oh, these aren't with me, but we just actually created some flashcards for real estate. So you can train your kids on real estate. Those will be released next month. And also, we have new flashcards for credit to teach kids all about credit cards, credit scores, everything else. So we decided to go ahead and add those two this year. That'll all be released in February. So if you'd like to take a look at the flashcards that we have now, feel free to go to financialflashcards.com. That's financialflashcards.com. So take care, everybody. God bless you. I'll see you guys real soon. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.